Well, to me, I think A Tale of Our Time means something that affects your beliefs. It's something that makes you think of how the world works and like it alters how you see the world in your way.
Hello everyone and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read, or watch in today's case, but I think you could probably read it too at this point in time. Regardless, I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and today I'm joined by my good friend and today's guest, Kevin Lee. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I just realized as I was saying this, I think you are, if not my oldest friend in Taiwan, then definitely one of the oldest friends that I've had in Taiwan.
Probably, because you started working at the same school as I did when you first got there, and I think I'm one of the first people I met.
You've met. The first thing we talked about was the video game Mass Effect. And I remember that distinctly.
Yes. And that's where we clicked and knew that we understood each other.
Yeah. I was like, oh, finally, somebody else that I could talk to, not about teaching, but the things that matter to me, video games. So, but for the people out there who don't know you, is there anything you would like to say to introduce yourself?
Well, I've been here in Taiwan for about, 9-10 years, maybe a bit more even. So yeah, I've been here for quite a while. I've moved around through Taiwan a little bit. I've lived in Hsinchu for a bit, but back here in Taipei. I love animals. I have 3 dogs and a cat and a turtle, and I've had them for a while now.
Worth noting, you rescue animals a lot. It feels like to me. You found my cat.
That
on
is
the street.
True. In the gutter, technically.
In the gutter. That's under the street.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's true. And sci-fi fan.
That's true, yes.
I guess people should pick up on that when we said we talked about Mass Effect first. But what story have you brought for us today?
Well, I was thinking of talking about Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, one of my favorite Star Wars movie that there was.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because I watched all the Star Wars movies. And I know the broad strokes of what have happened in them, but I always forget what happens when, where it happened in the movie continuum. And I tend to forget big pieces of information.
Especially Star Wars. It's such a huge universe, and there's so many movies,
there's
shows,
so
books, games, everything.
I cannot keep up with it. I admit I don't mostly, but within the main trilogy, the first trilogy, I know everything that happened. Within the prequel trilogy, I know the beginning point and the end point, and I think that's the most important part. So today we're talking about, this is the second one.
So episode 5.
Yes. So if anyone wants to hear what happened on the first episode, it's not actually, it's the 4th episode.
Yes.
It is the first one that was released, but it's the 4th one in the story continuum. Then you can actually listen to that previous episode that I did on Tales of Our Time, Star Wars A New Hope, Welcome to Sci-Fi, or you can go look it up yourself. But today we're going to assume that you have seen that as we continue forward into a summary. So what you would need to know, even if you did listen to the other one, is that Luke Skywalker is now training to be a Jedi, or he's decided to be a Jedi.
He just decided to be a Jedi. He hasn't even started training yet.
Okay.
This is where it starts.
Yeah, so this is where this is already showing. Yes, okay, so that'll be good. So Luke Skywalker has just decided to be a Jedi, and if that word doesn't mean anything to you, you can think of them like space wizards with cool laser swords. Someone out there is angry at me, but I feel like that's pretty good for what it is. He is fighting with some friends he met, a rebel who recently found a cause, Han Solo, who's a good space pilot, fast shooting. His best friend, Chewbacca, who is kind of the same thing, but also he's a gigantic, furry, Bigfoot-like creature. And they have joined forces with Princess Leia, who was a diplomat, and her planet was exploded, against the evil empire headed by the
evil emperor.
Yeah.
Or Darth Vader.
Yeah. And his henchman, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I always get confused because I always feel like Darth Vader is the boss, but he's actually like the right-hand man of the Emperor.
Exactly.
Who is Emperor Palpatine.
That's right.
Okay. That was more stressful for me than like I thought it was going to be. But that's what you need to know. So we're starting with Luke Skywalker here in episode 2. And he's just decided to join the fight on the side of the good guys as a Jedi.
Yep. So at the very end of A New Hope, they blew up the Death Star and he's part of the rebellion now.
It's a good entry point to
yes.
the rebellion.
Yes. So in Empire Strikes Back, it starts off with them on like a snowy planet, and it starts off with like a huge battle. All of a sudden, they get invaded by the Empire.
Yeah.
And they start fighting against like AT-STs or AT-ATs.
They're like these giant walking robots that shoot people.
Exactly.
Okay.
But before that whole huge battle, actually, Luke is off scouting and gets stuck in the snow and gets attacked by a wampa. Think of it like a yeti kind of creature, and he gets stuck in the ice. From that point, he kind of gets his vision and gets told that he needs to do some training by the ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He's like, you're not ready for this world yet.
Exactly. And to look for Yoda. After that, like they have to flee from the planet because of the Empire just showed up and Darth Vader is kicking some butt. And
yeah. Well, it is relevant. Right. Wait, this is true that the Jedi Order is gone.
Yeah.
So finding out that there is a Jedi, even like that wants to start training in Luke Skywalker, is why they're chasing them? Or is it just because they're part of the Empire?
The Empire is chasing them because they are part of the rebellion.
Part of the rebellion, not the Empire.
Exactly. Okay. So like they're the rebels are just fighting for their own cause. Like they think that the Empire is too oppressive. They do too many bad things to other planets.
Well, and they are.
Well, so they are.
Yeah. Okay, so then Luke gets his vision.
And he gets rescued by Han from the Wampa. They stay overnight inside a Tauntaun. If I'm not sure if you remember that scene.
It's a nasty one. They like cut open the animal and they stay inside.
Exactly. They get back to the base and we're able to flee. So Han and Chewie and Princess Leia go off on their own, and Luke and R2-D2 head off to like look for Yoda.
And he does find him on like a swamp planet.
Yes, Dagobah. Luke finds this weird little green creature.
Yes.
He's asking him like, "Oh, I'm looking for a Yoda," and it's all of a mystery who this little creature is.
Yeah,
and
he's really annoying in the beginning. Actually,
exactly.
I remember that. I remember watching that movie for the first time and like being super annoyed by this tiny little green man. He's like hitting things, asking intrusive questions.
But Luke later finds out that he is Yoda, and he wants to start training with him.
Yeah.
And Luke starts seeing how powerful Yoda is with his force powers. He showed his first like bit of force power by like lifting up the X-wing out of the swampy water and everything.
His like space plane.
Yeah.
And he just like picks it up with magic force.
Exactly. And he's now inspired kind of to like train under him and learn the ways of the force. Meanwhile, Han and Princess Leia, they head off. They get stuck in an asteroid into like some sort of worm creature thingy first, but then they get away from that and they go to Cloud City Bespin because I believe Han had like a friend there.
Yes.
Lando Calrissian. And
Lando's like a diplomat now? Is that or no?
He's
someone important.
He's someone important. He's like he owns Cloud City. He's like the leader there or something like that.
Yeah.
And Han thinks like he's a good friend or an old friend. He's where he got the Millennium Falcon from, and
then they get sold out, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So his best friend like sells him out to the Empire, and they get captured.
Darth Vader was like sitting there in the dining room and surprises them, and they're all captured.
Is this when they get sent to Jabba the Hutt?
Jabba the Hutt is the next movie.
Oh, dang
so
it.
That's
I just
remembered
it happened somewhere in here. Okay. So they get captured by the Empire. That's the important part.
They get captured by the Empire.
And yeah.
So then Luke has a vision about
his friends getting captured by
exactly.
the Empire.
And he wants to leave Yoda to rescue his friends, but Yoda's advising not to leave, that he should continue training.
Yeah. He's also like, you're not ready yet for this world out there.
So he winds up going back and like trying to help his friends.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he lands onto Cloud City, sneaks around, and he rescues Leia, at least. Oh no, Lando has a change of mind, frees Leia, and then they get off. Like they flee in the Millennium Falcon along with like Chewbacca and 3PO. Before that happens, though, Darth Vader puts Han Solo into the carbonite. So they freeze him into the statue thing.
Yes.
Passes
he gets
him
frozen
off
into his statue.
Yeah, passes him off to Boba Fett, who is going to deliver him to Jabba, and that's where it kind of ends off.
And Leia says, "I love you."
Yes.
Right? That like love triangle thing finally becomes a line where we're like, okay,
I love
Leia
you.
loves Han Solo.
And of course Han Solo says, I know.
I know. It's very iconic.
But yes, anyway.
Yes. And so then Frozen Han Solo is sold off to Fett for the next movie. And then it's the fight. And it is in Cloud City.
Yes, it is in Cloud City. There's an epic battle. During this time, Luke is battling out with Darth Vader, and this is the epic scene where you find out who Darth Vader is.
Yes.
Who is Luke's father.
A huge reveal.
A huge thing. Yeah. And like
Darth Vader's like, you should join the dark side of the Force. It's great over here. And he's like, you don't know me. He's like, I do. I'm your dad. Luke loses a hand.
Drops down a pit.
Survives.
He's hanging off, dangling off the bottom of this Cloud City. And this is where Lando and Princess Leia rescue him. And then they all flee off.
And Luke gets a robot hand.
Yeah.
So it's true. You said it ends on a cliffhanger. I forgot that it was so much of a cliffhanger. I almost literally. So great. Wow. Every time I do one of these, I'm like, I feel good. I remember this. I could go through it. And then there's a lot I don't know. So I am glad you summarized it for us. Thank you. Yes. There's a lot that happens. It's a big one.
I understand what you mean. Like how much how much material Star Wars is, because even when I was watching these movies, when like originally I believe I saw all the first 3 movies back to back. I didn't actually so like it is a bit of a blur, but like I've also rewatched it like
so many times.
That
almost sometimes makes it worse though, because then like after you rewatch it so many times, you just remember the events. You don't always remember the order in which it happens. You just know that it's going to happen. So wait, let's dial into that. What was your first experience with this movie, with The Empire Strikes Back?
This was like, I think I was at least 10 years old, 10, 11 years old. My great aunt gifted me the VHS set of Star Wars. I've never seen this before. It was one of my first introductory to sci-fi in general as well.
Science fiction, science fantasy, all those things.
I absolutely loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. Like, remember those times when, like, as a kid, you would rewatch videos back, like, nonstop?
Absolutely.
Star Wars.
It finishes playing, you press rewind the tape all the way, just press play all over again.
Exactly. And it was one of those movies for me when I was a kid. Like, I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah. I remember, I think you said you watched them all back to back. I remember when I watched them with my family, I think we watched them over the course of a week. Okay. Where like we watched one movie every night, because it's a lot happening, and I don't remember how old I was, but I feel like I was in elementary school, but it was a really fun series to watch. So then moving on from there, what was so meaningful to you about this movie?
It was, as I said, the introduction to science fiction for me, and I love the designs of everything. Like I love the aliens and the creatures, and that just inspired me. Like I just love crazy monsters and stuff like that.
Well, and that's a good point too that you bring up, is I feel like this movie, more than the first one, from what I remember from seeing of it, opened up a lot more of the world, because the first one focuses a lot on what I remember as like just the people. You have the planet that Luke comes from, but you don't see too much of like the greater world outside of that. Then they're with like the rebellion, who also I remember being mostly people, droids. And so finally when we got to this movie, it's like, oh, we're starting off on an alien planet. We're going to show you the giant terrible robots that the Empire has. Yes. Like you get to go visit these, like they go to a bunch of different places. They go to this like fancy sky city. Like the aesthetic was really made clear in this movie.
No, I totally agree. Like, I love just the way how things looked, how alien everything was, and it opened up a lot of my imagination back then.
Well, you do a lot of painting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now still, like even Star Wars to this point, right?
Yes, actually, I do like a bit of like Star Wars role-playing games and like miniature games and stuff like that. And I love painting and coloring, like just doing crazy stuff as much as I can.
Do you have a favorite? It's hard. Everybody, that's a bad question to ask, I know. But like, I don't know. Maybe do you have a favorite? If not like Alien, do you have like a favorite like aesthetic from there? Planetary aesthetic.
I was always a fan of the Wookiees. Just the way they looked. Like Chewbacca, I felt like he was one of my best friends. I actually had like a little stuffed animal when I was a kid.
You still have a mask here.
That's true.
You used it in our school one time.
Yeah, I used it as like a Halloween mask. Yeah, Chewie was one of my favorites. My pet turtle is actually named Chewie.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, he definitely one of my huge inspirations.
Okay. So then let's go into almost our last question then. What do you think makes this a tale of our time? Or to put it another way, what meaning do you think that other people can find in this movie?
Well, in Empire Strikes Back, it had one of the biggest plot twists ever. And I think it was the very first experience I've had to that. Like, the reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's father. That's just so iconic. And
yes, it gets misremembered a lot, right?
Exactly.
I think, Luke, I am your father, but that he doesn't actually say that, or something. It gets misremembered, but
exactly. And it's just like, as that was the first time that I thought, like, wow, stories can have something crazy at the end, something that's like not expected, and
it was a big gut punch. But you're right. I think definitely for people of our generation, I think it is like a defining plot twist that we experience. Like when we were young, for like my parents' generation that did watch it in theaters, maybe not so defining, but definitely I think one of the most iconic plot twists in cinema history. And also to that point, I think the second movie, just talking it through with you, has some of the most like quotable moments that happen in the first trilogy. Because also the Han Solo thing of like, I love you, I know, like that one just gets quoted many times. The scenes that
even
happen.
The introduction of Yoda and his speech, and like how everybody loves to talk like Yoda sometimes.
Yeah, I think like getting to that point, I guess what it feels like, what makes The Empire Strikes Back a tale of our time, is just the fact that like when people think of Star Wars, probably what you're thinking of is something that happens in the second movie. Like that's the scene that you think of, even though like we have the first movie that's like Luke's arc, it gets wrapped up sort of in the next movie, the final one. Like it's just so iconic and emblematic of what Star Wars is.
Exactly. Yes.
So down to the plot twist.
Yep.
I remember to this day, like, I'm your father, and like my siblings and I looking at each other like, oh my god, and my parents just being like, the satisfaction on their faces. So unfortunately, we are almost out of time. But Kevin, if you could give Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back a one-phrase subtitle of your very own, what would that be?
Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back. I am your father.
Just boil it right down to what we all remember as the most iconic moment. Yeah, I think so. But you know what? It's a good point, because that's what we just said. Like this movie is iconic in an iconic series. It stands out for that reason. So I love it.
Right.
It's a good thing I said it's not a spoiler-free show, because now we've gone so far as to make the title the spoiler. So I guess I'd have to know.
Yeah.
You would have to know. You don't know who the father is. Right? I don't know.
I guess so.
I'm not sure. So anyway, thank you for joining me, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. And also thanks to everyone else out there for joining us here on Radio Taiwan International. This has been Tales of Our Time. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, joined by today's guest, again, my good friend, Kevin Lee. We have been discussing Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. I Am Your Father, a tale of our time. We'll see you next time.